This is Mafia: Bloodlines of Betrayal. It was released in 2006, and it's probably one of the best Mafia games that no one ever played. The game takes us to the sunny island of Paradise in the year 1930. You play as Lucas Bernard, young man who returns home after 6 years away, only to find his family and friends murdered. The culprit is someone named Sal, an old family friend who you trusted like a brother. But now he's made a run for it with your sister, Victoria. Consumed by grief and anger, you set out to find him and bring him to justice. So this is not a Mafia game where you play as a hardened criminal or take part in daring heists. Instead, you play as a regular guy who gets caught up in organized crime and must use whatever means necessary to survive. It's kind of like if Max Payne had a baby with Grand Theft Auto. You spend the early stages of the game tracking down Sal across the island. But it soon becomes apparent that this is going to take some time. So you decide to get a job at Sal's casino to get closer to him. Of course, he has no idea that you're hunting him. He thinks you've come back to Paradise simply to work for him. While undercover, you befriend two of Sal's top earners, Gina and Johnny, who are both surprisingly easy to get close to considering they work for a ruthless mob boss. And when you eventually kill Sal, there's not even a case scene. Instead, you just walk up to him and do the deed yourself. But before we get into all that, you have to make sure that you blend in. After all, you don't want anyone to know you're an undercover hitman. This is where the game's namesake comes into play. As you work at the casino, go on missions for Sal and make money hand over fist. You can increase your character's intimidation, charisma, and fighting skills. These three stats determine how other characters respond to you. Intimidation will affect how much money people pay you for doing jobs, and how willing they are to help you out. Charisma determines how well you can talk your way out of situations, and how believable your lies are. And fighting skill determines how well you can hold your own in a brawl. It's like a social RPG system, which is a really cool concept, and I haven't seen many games try it since. Sure, there are plenty of stealth games where you need to blend in, but those usually focus on your ability to hide rather than develop your character. When I first started playing, I found myself in quite a tough situation. Apparently, my intimidation stat was so low that no one wanted to give me any jobs, so I was stuck in the starting area with barely any money. I ended up having to resort to petty theft just to make ends meet. Luckily, I found a workaround by changing the difficulty. This made everyone much more friendly and willing to give me jobs, which helped me boost up my stats and become a lot wealthier. With more money, I was able to buy weapons to defend myself against the occasional goon that tries to mug me in the street. There's quite a variety of guns to choose from, including shotguns, Tommy guns, grenades, and even rocket launchers. I mean, come on. What other game lets you take out rival mobsters with a frickin' rocket launcher? By the mid-game, I had enough cash to buy my own nightclub, which became a front for my criminal activities. I also hired bodyguards to protect me on the street. Bodyguards were NPCs that you could hire to follow you around and fight alongside you, although they weren't the most intelligent units and would often end up charging into groups of enemies headfirst and getting themselves killed. This is where the game starts to feel a bit more like Mafia. Now that you have your own business to manage, you'll find yourself making difficult decisions that affect how the story plays out. You can choose to double-cross certain characters or refuse to do jobs that go against your morals. Although no matter what choices you make, the game always ends in the same way. It's not uncommon for pedestrians to approach you and ask for money, especially if you've got a large sum displayed on screen. This can get pretty annoying because if you don't have enough cash to hand over, they'll threaten to kill you and then proceed to beat you up. Usually this happens when you least expect it, like right before you enter a cutscene. So it is important to keep an eye on the amount of cash you carrying at all times. On the flip side, if you have enough money to spare, the random encounters can offer some nice bonus content. Sometimes you'll meet people who challenge you to races. Other times, you'll stumble across gang fights that you can join in on. My personal favorite is when you get approached by two cops who offer to let you go if you give them some money. And no, that isn't a bribe. Nope, nothing illegal going on here. The main storyline is split into chapters, each separated by having you attend a meeting with your boss. During these meetings, you will receive new objectives and be given the opportunity to increase your stats further through additional side quests. There's also the option to play poker. Not really sure why this isn't a Mafia game, but it's always fun to see. Each chapter brings you closer to finding your sister, which is definitely a good thing, because she is one of the few bright spots in an otherwise depressing game. That's right, there's not a single funny moment in this entire game. Even the upbeat jazz music does little to lighten the mood. From the very beginning, you're surrounded by dead bodies and forced to shoot your first victim within the opening 5 minutes. Then you spend the rest of the game either being hunted or doing the hunting yourself. Still, despite the dark subject matter, the game looks amazing.
Yes!
For a 2006 title, the graphics are surprisingly detailed and realistic. Gunshot fire leaves bullet holes in walls and windows. Car crashes leave skid marks on the ground and damage the vehicles around them. And the character models have a surprising amount of detail, too. I also thought the choice to set the game in a tropical location was a nice touch, because it allowed the developers to add some variety to the environments. Plus, it's always nice to see a different setting for a change. But unfortunately, the incredible visuals are wasted on such a poor camera system. Let me show you why. See that guy over there? Yeah, the guy you've been controlling this entire time. Now imagine trying to fight while looking at him. That's right, this game doesn't have a free camera. You can only look in 4 directions. It makes combat incredibly awkward, because if the enemy is just a couple of feet away from you, there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And forget about trying to aim at targets. And speaking of combat, there's really not much to it. Enemies will occasionally throw their weapons at you, or try to grab them back after you've taken them out. But apart from that, there's no special moves or combo system. All you can do is shoot, reload, and dodge. Oh, and if you get injured, you can press the first aid button to access a mini health bar. This will slowly regenerate over time, but you can speed it up by pressing the right mouse button. Just make sure you've got some bandages in your inventory first. I think the devs wanted this game to be more focused on stealth, but they added in combat just so you wouldn't be completely defenseless. Unfortunately, there's not much variety when it comes to enemy types. There are the odd corrupt cop here and there, but for the most part, every enemy is just a regular gangster. However, they do become increasingly tougher as the game progresses, so at least there's that. Another downside is that there's no driving physics. Cars simply teleport you from one location to another without any input from the player. It feels like they took something that worked in GTA and tried to implement it in Mafia. But they didn't realize that driving is much more engaging when the player has some control over it. But despite all my complaints, Mafia Bloodlines is still a fantastic game that deserves far more recognition than it currently gets. Maybe one day, we'll get a remake of it. Here's hoping.